The entire cryptocurrency market is in a very dangerous place right now. And it's not because of anything that's fundamentally wrong with cryptocurrency, like a layer 1 failing or some kind of brutal regulation news that's about to get released, but instead it's because of its relation to major indices like the Nasdaq. And so today I want to show you just how dangerous of a position the Nasdaq is in and how this could affect the price of cryptocurrency. As of right now, the markets are extremely correlated. So I want to show you what's happening on this weekly time scale and just how much farther Nasdaq could fall if its major support area breaks. So as we're looking at Bitcoin right now, we can see that there's really nothing too scary about this Bitcoin chart. Yes, you could argue that this is a bear flag since we are falling down and forming this rising channel, but this is just a rising channel inside of a much larger rising channel right now. The entire cryptocurrency market is still, in a sense, in this uptrend. We're seeing higher swing lows with higher swing highs on a macro time scale, and we're also seeing this if we zoom in on a micro time scale as well. And so as cryptocurrency is approaching not one, but two major support areas down here, one being the first rising channel, the second one being the second macro rising channel, there's nothing too awful about this. Again, as we approach support, this is arguably the best areas to buy because we can set ourselves up in great trading positions with stop losses and risk versus reward ratios. And if there's anywhere where I would want to enter into a position, fundamentally for Bitcoin and other cryptos, it's as it's approaching these major long-term support levels. And so as we are approaching these levels, you can't really say that Bitcoin is in any kind of an incredibly bearish position. And so what I want to do is actually go over to the weekly and show you what's happening on Bitcoin and zoom out before we get into the Nasdaq. And so as we zoom out to the weekly of Bitcoin, it's the same kind of argument. Yes, we are below our moving averages right now. Yes, we just actually broke below and rejected these weekly 20-day and 50-day moving averages. But, the overall technical analysis of Bitcoin right here isn't that bad. And on the good news, Bitcoin actually just saw a higher swing low on the weekly MACD, showing that we are seeing lower levels of negative momentum from the most recent bear trend compared to the one that we saw just after the last summer's bull run in 2021. So looking at the macros of the MACD and also the RSI, we actually saw triple bullish divergence, meaning that every time that we saw a major pullback in Bitcoin since the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, Bitcoin has actually been setting higher swing lows on a macro weekly RSI, meaning every bear market that we've had since then has been weaker than the previous one. And if the bears are getting weaker in a sense like this, then, and I just realized my head was blocking part of this, but if the bears are getting weaker, arguably the bulls are getting stronger. Because if the bears are not able to get a higher, or in sense, a lower price on the RSI or a lower number on the RSI, then they're just not as strong as they previously were because they're not able to push price down with enough power. So what I think everyone is a little bit nervous about here is Bitcoin's straight correlation to something like Nasdaq. And so I want to talk exactly about what's happening on Nasdaq because these two have been oddly correlated, and I understand that they are similar. Nasdaq represents a lot of tech, especially within the United States, and Bitcoin represents, I guess, a form of technology as well, but I think it's so much more than that, and eventually I do see a decoupling of these two. I think right now the correlation's at about 70-30, something like that, and it goes all the way down though. Sometimes it's 40-60, and so we're really on two sides of the different extremes right here, but as of the moment, the current moment, these two are oddly correlated. Now, as Nasdaq approaches this major support level, we can see that as it has fallen down to this $13,000 support, we've used this numerous times, right? I mean, we bounced off of this back in May of 2021. We bounced off of this again at the beginning of 2022. And most recently, we just came down to this position and to this area where we bounced off of this area a third time. Now, my fear here is that if we are, for number one, we're already at yearly lows for Nasdaq. We just hit it this week. But if we break this area, this could send us to multi-year lows. And right now there is a lot of buying pressure. But my fear here is what could happen if this support breaks. And in order to understand that, we have to go ahead and look at what's happened in the past. in order to fully understand what could happen in the future. And so I'm going to zoom out to the weekly chart and go over something that one of my coworkers over at Crypto Nation actually got to talk to me about. And I had a great conversation with everyone in Crypto Nation yesterday, where I actually made a post talking and explaining all this early. So if you want to join Crypto Nation and get early access to all of my technical analysis and have direct access to ask me questions, check out Crypto Nation in the link down in the description below. But one of my great buddies over there, Aaron, otherwise known as Pizza Mine, was explaining this concept of the Nasdaq potentially touching the 200-day moving average on this weekly timescale. And so if that is to happen, we can see that this area of support is right around here. And in terms of large bearish trends, the 200-day moving average on this weekly timescale seems to be a pretty consistent support level. And so I want to highlight, and I've already gone ahead and highlighted all the times that we have tested this since we have crossed back over this from the 2008 crash, which is actually one of the few times that we had broken below this area within the last couple of decades. So we can see that just around here, we've tested this area and gotten close to this area just time and time again. And every time we do get close to this area or even touch it, this seems to be a pretty solid support for the Nasdaq. And so what I'm looking at over here is saying, okay, well, we have not tested this guy in a very long time. In fact, the last time that we tested this was back in the Corona crash, or even got near it, was during the Corona crash of 2020. And so we've had a couple years now, almost just over 2 years to the day, actually, and we've been parabolic since then. So is this the time? Is this the correction that has been deserved, or that we have been waiting for Nasdaq to come and touch this area once again? And I always forget that my head is blocking part of this, but as you guys can see over here, this has been a pretty direct correlation. So I want to zoom back in and look at just how far we could be looking to fall on Nasdaq and what this could be for stocks and other cryptos. Now, I don't like really talking about stocks on this channel because that's just not what we're about, but there is a correlation here, so I think it's worthwhile talking about. So if Nasdaq were to go back down towards this 200-day moving average, this could be a fall of about 19.25%, about 19.25% roughly. What this would do is maybe drop stocks anywhere from 20 to 30%, maybe even up to 40 depending on the stock. And I think it could drop cryptocurrency anywhere from 30 to 40% depending on the market cap of the cryptocurrency and also what industry they're in. So if indices are going to fall nearly 20%, stocks could fall 30%, and cryptos could maybe even fall up to 40%, because as we go down that list, things get more volatile. And that's a double-edged sword where when we're in an uptrend, you're going to see the exact same results. Cryptos are going to move 40%, stocks might move 20 to 30%, indices might move 10 to 20%. And this is a double-edged sword. In this case, it's a bearish one, where if we were to break this area, measure down the measured move to this 200-day moving average, that could be almost a 19.5% fall for Nasdaq, which means if we were to measure this from all-time highs to this 200-day moving average, this would be about 36.5% all the way to the downside. And if we look at the recent moves of when we've done this before, this previous time in the Corona crash, it was a crash of 32%. In the previous crashes other than that, this one was about 26%, and so on and so forth. And so would it be unlikely to see a 36% drop? The answer is, well, it could be very unlikely. We're in unprecedented times right now. There is so much happening in the world. I'm afraid I'm going to get shadow banned if I talk about it, but there's so much happening across the world, all kinds of different black swan events, and also the money printer is running rampant right now, that I don't think that it's impossible. I do think that it's unlikely for major indices to drop another 20%. I do want to say that it's certainly possible because we have routinely come down to this level before, and right now, again, it's nothing that Bitcoin is necessarily doing wrong. There is so much great adoption that's happening out there, with Bitcoin having its first 401k and being used as legal tender in now multiple different countries. And there is just a lot of great stuff that is on the peak of this horizon, and we can see the light at the end of this tunnel. But the traditional markets just don't look as good as crypto. So maybe cryptocurrency can hold the traditional markets up, but as Nasdaq approaches this 1300 level, I do want to make sure that it holds, because if it doesn't, I certainly do think indices could fall another 10%, which could be pretty detrimental for a lot of cryptocurrency, right? Because if we want to actually zoom out and go back over here, another, here's what I want to measure out, is if we fall all the way to the bottom of support, that could maybe be about 9 to 10% on Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin wants to test the weekly 200-day moving average, that would be a fall of about 44% back down to roughly $21,000. Now, I've said before, something ridiculous would have to happen for Bitcoin to fall under 30,000, and if it did, I don't see it being a long-term thing. But it's certainly possible. You have to prepare for the worst, but be optimistic for the best in scenarios like this. And so what I am doing in this area is just staying vigilant, watching my different support levels. If support levels break, I'm looking at, okay, well, what does the macro trend look like? Where do we have major supports? Where have we retraced back to in the past? And that's what these 3 different supports are, being this weekly 200-day moving average, and then of course the 2 support lines that we have drawn on our chart, just around like 37,500, and then another one down at like 35,500. So what I would like to see is, if we go back to the daily chart, I want to really see Bitcoin break above its previous high of 48K. I think that it needs to do that. We're starting to see, and we have started to see, some higher swing highs and some higher swing lows, but what we really need to see now is, let's break that 48K area. Let's get above the 200 on the daily. Let's get above the 50 and the 20 on the daily. And when I say 50 and 20, I mean the 50 and 20-day moving averages. Let's get above all of this right in here, and I think that would put cryptocurrency at a very good spot. If we want to go ahead and take a quick look at the total too, which is the representation of the entire altcoin market cap, this guy actually doesn't look too bad either. And what we can see is that in the macro, this looks very similar to Bitcoin. I mean, it's just a beautiful uptrend, and as we approach support, something to note here is that previous resistance in here is now being tested as support, and it's really ironic how that works, right? So we are testing former resistance as support. Could this be a potential break, hook, and go pattern from a form of a pennant, I guess you could say, that was forming, or maybe even a falling channel? So again, I want to see the altcoin market cap break above 1.28 trillion, and I want to see Bitcoin break above 48,000, and Nasdaq simply just needs to hold 13,000. I really don't want to see it fall below that, or else I think things could get pretty ugly pretty fast. But if you like this kind of content and you like the videos that I make, definitely consider subscribing. I make content like this every single week on Wednesday and Friday, so that everyone can just have access to it. So if you like my content, definitely consider hitting that like button, dropping a comment in the comment section down below, and subscribing to the channel and turning on those post notifications to get access to more videos like this one. And if you want to join Crypt Nation, there's a link to that in the description down below as well. So thank you all for watching. I hope you did enjoy, and until next time, I will see you all in the next video.